The Postal Workers Union of Aotearoa rejects the proposal, fearing for vulnerable communities. John Maynard was a postie for 20 years and now works with the union. He joins us now. John, good morning. I'm not sure if you were listening in, but if you were, what's your reaction to hearing what James said?
Well, first, I'm wondering if 6 weeks is enough time for people to make the submissions they'll need to make, because there are three major areas that concern us here. One, of course, is the posties' jobs that would be affected. Second is the rural people with their reduced deliveries. But third, which is not mentioned so much, is that the company wants to move people away from the letterbox at their house to have clusters of letterboxes. Already in some subdivisions, New Zealand Post will not have a postie go into the subdivision. You have to have your letterboxes in a cluster, risk of them being broken into, and that's been happening. And they want to slowly do that in the towns and cities, move people's letterboxes away into clusters down the end of the street.
And they are three important topics that you raised there. But how can you argue when the volume of mail is plummeting that we retain these jobs, given that we've gone from 1 billion back in the early 2000s to now 180 million, as we heard James say?
Oh, the company, New Zealand Post, recognises there will continue to be mail. That's why they want to sack all the posties and give the mail to couriers. But there's a widespread feeling amongst the posties that I've worked with for many years that New Zealand Post has been deliberately running down its mail service. One example was the removal of 1,500 roadside posting boxes, including during postal voting. They would not go out and consult with the people. They would not put anything in the local newspaper. They would just quietly remove the boxes and upset a lot of people. So that was an infrastructure for postal voting removed by New Zealand Post. The State-Owned Enterprises Act requires them to have regard for the interest of the community, and we don't believe that New Zealand Post has been doing that very well.
Let's talk about rural communities in terms of the impact this will have on them. What do you think will happen?
Well, if they're talking about every 3 days, people in the rural area rely a lot on the rural delivery. That was 6 days, has gone down to 5, their newspapers, their sense of belonging to a community. But our union is not operating in the rural, we operate in the towns and the cities. And they're talking about going down to every 2nd day. We recognise communication is changing and mail volumes are reducing. But we don't think the company's figures are correct. Bit misleading, because we don't believe they include all the mail that New Zealand Post has lost to competitors because it's not been running a very efficient, reliable and trusted service.
So what would your message be to the government?
The message to the government would be to encourage people to participate in the consultation. Those people who are most vulnerable are least likely to be able to participate because they don't rely on internet, which is how this whole consultation's been run. So our message to the government is you must have New Zealand Post complying with its obligations to have regard for the interest of the community.
John Maynard, very good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Kia ora.
There's so much in that. Cluster mailboxes.
Yes.
That kind of blew me away. And so, you know, potentially we will have mailboxes at the end of the street, so not outside your home, right? So if somebody's home, they know that a package is coming. We all know that packages have gone and disappeared, especially during this time of the year, that you won't be able to monitor that, right?
Right.
It'll just be altogether at the end. Okay, so I need to think about that. That's kind of just blowing me away a little bit. Yeah. Imagine if that was the case.
I don't know, I just think...
I mean, it probably is in some of your communities at the moment, and I don't know how it's working, and I would love to hear from you. But also those in the rural communities. Are you okay with your postal service going down to 3 days as opposed to 5, which it is now? And what impact will that actually have on you? breakfast@tvnz.co.nz.
Or alternatively, you can send it to our PO Box 3819 and we'll get to it just before Christmas. That'd be great. The problem is you're going to have to change at some point, aren't you? Because the trend is clearly going one way. You need to make a decision at some point. If it's not going to be now, it's going to be further on down the track.
And look, we heard from John, who's in the union. He's been a postie for 20 years. I think, to be fair, him and James agree that it is changing, like you say, Chris. You know, like communication is now moving online for a lot of us. And I get that there are rural communities who rely on this mail. But again,
What's about the connection,
a
though?
letter these days? And yeah, I get people send the card and what have you, but do you really use that service? And my wife and I had a bit of an argy-bargy over this at the moment, but I was just like, no one does it anymore. Everyone's gone online.
No, that's right. But you still are receiving things in the mail, right?
But I think we need to shift to paying for courier services.
You know what
no
I
longer
can
relying
see-
on New Zealand Post.
This is what I can see happening is that we're going to go, right, okay, let's get rid of the service. And in about 5 years' time, everybody will be lacking community, will be lacking connection. And they'll go, here's a brilliant idea. Let's have the ability to send each other letters.
Maybe you've got a brilliant idea. breakfast@tvnz.co.nz. We want to hear from you.